A solo vet in Kearney, Nebraska was losing at least one patient booking every single day, and she had no idea. 35 calls hit the pet pad each day. And when Rose Adrian was in surgery, most of them weren't answered. She didn't hire more staff. She didn't patch the old answering service. She switched to an AI trained on veterinary triage. One change. And inside a month, at least one recovered appointment appeared daily from calls that had been quietly walking away for years. The pet pad sits on East 25th Street in Kearney, a mid-sized Nebraska city without many specialty veterinary options. Rose Adrian built it around a single idea. Every pet and owner walks out knowing they were actually heard. The clinic handles small animals and exotic pets, services from routine checkups and dental work to digital x-rays, dermatology, and exotic animal surgery. It is not a corporate group. It is not a franchise. It is Rose and 2.5 other people. That lean headcount was a deliberate choice, low overhead, tight quality control, and direct relationships with every client. But it created a structural tension that compounded quietly, one missed call at a time. 35 calls a day is not unusual for a busy independent clinic. What was unusual was that Rose was expected to handle them herself, while simultaneously performing surgery, conducting exams, managing the schedule, and running the front desk. During procedures, the phone rang in an empty hallway. The old answering service picked up, but it had a problem. It did not understand veterinary medicine. Medical terms got mangled. Triage calls were handled with generic scripts. An owner calling about a vomiting rabbit and an owner calling to reschedule a routine checkup received identical responses. Voicemail piled up and demanded reviewing at the end of the day, pulling focus from patients. The real constraint was not lack of demand. Clients wanted to come in. The bottleneck was at the front door, or rather on the phone line just before it. Every call that fell through was an appointment that did not get made. Every mishandled triage call was a pet that waited longer than it needed to. Rose understood the problem clearly. What she needed was a solution that understood it too. Rose evaluated options the way a diagnostician would, not by looking for the cheapest fix, but by asking what the problem actually was. The obvious answer was another staff member, but in a tight labor market for trained veterinary staff, that option carried its own risks. Interview cycles, onboarding time, turnover every 18 months. A full-time hire for phone coverage alone was hard to justify on the numbers. What the problem required was a frontline responder that could operate during surgeries, after hours, and through peak exam times, without fatigue, without sick days, and without a learning curve every 6 months. It also required something the previous answering service had failed at, understanding the specific language of veterinary medicine. She chose an AI phone receptionist, a voice agent designed for service businesses with deep customization options for specialized industries. The key was not the technology itself, it was the training she gave it. Before going live, the system was configured for the pet pad's specific call types. Triage scenarios were mapped. What constitutes urgent, what can wait, what needs an immediate callback. Medical terminology was loaded. New client intake workflows were defined separately from returning client follow-ups. Escalation rules were set. The setup took days, not months. A 3.5-person clinic with no IT department did it themselves. Once live, the AI answered every call. It screened new clients from returning ones, gathered initial information, performed basic intake triage, booked appointments where appropriate, and sent prioritized summaries directly to Rose's inbox. Not voicemail, not a pile of message slips, a ranked list of what needed attention and what could wait. The old service had answered calls. The new one understood them. Every unanswered call had already cost the clinic a booking it would never recover. Now the calls were answered. What Rose didn't know yet was whether answered was enough. It was the third week of operation when she pulled the transcript of a Tuesday afternoon call. A golden retriever owner that the dog hadn't been eating seemed a bit off. Under the previous service, that call would have generated a standard booking note, appointment request, and callback number. Just routine. The kind of call that gets slotted in 2 days out. The AI flagged it differently, and it asked 3 follow-up questions. Duration, whether the dog was still drinking, any vomiting, and marked the callback urgent. Rose pulled the record. The dog came in the next morning, gastrointestinal blockage, caught early. That call existed because of one decision Rose had made before go live. She hadn't used a generic veterinary template. She had spent an afternoon mapping out the specific call types her practice actually received. The difference between an anxious owner and one describing a genuine emergency. She had written in the questions she would ask herself if she'd been the one to pick up the phone. The morning summaries arrived with a structure the team could read in seconds. Routine scheduling, follow-up queries, urgent callbacks, flagged, reason visible, not a pile of messages, a triage list. The configuration work, that single afternoon before any call went live, is the step most practices skip. They install the platform, turn it on, and get answers without judgment. Rose didn't skip it. The gap between answering professionally and responding clinically was closed before the first call came in. On the Monday of week 4, she turned the system on full time. The first visible result was simple. Appointments stopped disappearing. At least one additional booking appeared each day from calls that had previously gone unanswered. Over a 5-day working week, that is 5 recovered appointments. At an average consultation rate for a Nebraska independent clinic, that is roughly 1 salary equivalent to a quarter of clinic revenue, that the pet pad had been leaving in voicemail every year without knowing it. The second consequence was less obvious, but arguably more valuable. Clinical time stayed clinical. Before, Rose's day was punctuated by interruptions, a call during a procedure, a voicemail pile to process before closing, and the mental overhead of switching between vet and receptionist, sometimes mid-examination. Now, the phone was handled, the inbox arrived pre-sorted, and Rose could stay with the patient on the table. Without the back half of her mind tracking what was piling up at the front desk, that recovered focus is not a soft benefit. It compounds. Fewer rushed procedures, better attention in complex cases, exotic animals, and unfamiliar presentation, less end-of-day mental load. The kind of steady, unbroken concentration that a 3.5-person clinic needs its most skilled person operating at consistently. The lean team structure stayed intact. No new hire was needed. The clinic maintained its family-oriented standard, the careful attention that distinguishes a practice run by someone who chose veterinary medicine over volume. The AI handled the calls. The humans handled everything only humans could. Rose had not automated her clinic's personality. She had automated the part that was quietly draining it. The pet pad's outcome was not exceptional technology. It was a diagnostic step taken before the decision. Rose knew what the problem was before she chose the solution. She knew the previous service's failure was not that it lacked availability. It lacked veterinary judgment. She knew that a generic fix applied to a specialized problem would produce a generic result. So she didn't just buy a platform, she built a system configured to her clinic's actual triage standards. That step is available to any service business operating at this scale. The call audit and the list of industry-specific terms your intake process needs to understand. The escalation rules that match how your team actually works, not how a default template assumes you work. The businesses that see automated phone intake fail almost always share one characteristic. They turned on the platform before they defined what the platform needed to know. The ones that see it succeed almost always share the other. They treated setup as a diagnostic exercise, not an installation. The phone line was the same, the calls were the same, only the system listening changed. How many calls does your business miss in a typical week? Not just unanswered, but genuinely gone. And do you know what those customers did next? Before you automate your intake, have you mapped the specific terminology and judgment calls your industry uses that a generic system would not know? Or are you planning to run the default and hope it is close enough? If you pulled 1 week of call logs right now, the ones that went to voicemail or were never picked up, would you know which were bookings you lost, complaints you never heard, cases that waited longer than they should have? Don't click away yet. See that video on my left? Click it right now. The next story shows what happens when a business fixes the right constraint first, or the wrong one. You need to see this. Click that video and keep watching.